Hello, today is April 2nd of 2018. My name is Justin Smith and with me is U.S. Army veteran Sergei Onohkin. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
So you were born in Belarus. Can you tell me about what it was like growing up there?
Well, I was only there until I was 6 years old. I don't really remember it too much. It was during like the Soviet Union. It was, I mean, it seemed normal to me. Can't really tell you a lot about it. It was just, I just remember here and there, like we lived in kind of like a village. We lived in kind of like a, maybe like a townhome, you would say. So basically my grandfather, he had a house and he built an addition onto it so then we could live on the other side of it. And, but we had a farm, we had like pigs, then we just grew some potatoes. I don't know, I remember picking strawberries, cherries and stuff like that. And we had a church in the back of the, that we built, or not me personally, but that my family built. So yeah, and that's pretty much it. Nothing too, I guess like another thing, it was very like low tech. There was no, like I said, we lived in a village. We didn't have running water or anything like that. We'd have to go to like a well to bring back. So it was, we didn't have like toilets or anything like that. We had to go outside. So it was pretty much like that, kind of like living, compared to now, it's like living in the Stone Age, I guess you could say. So, yeah.
Wow. So when did you move to the United States?
November 1991, around there.
Wow.
So,
Was there a reason why?
yeah, so, let's see, like the story changed so many times, because I asked my friends a lot, and, but I guess there was a couple of reasons. So like the original, one of the reasons was we lived near Chernobyl, the Chernobyl area, so where they had like the fallout and everything like that. It was one of the heavier impacted areas. So that was one of the reasons. Another reason was because we were Christian and it wasn't, in communist Russia, religion wasn't really acceptable. Mm-hmm. So I don't really remember any kind of like anything bad happening to me, but like I said, my family had a church in the back, and a lot of them, they were preachers and everything like that. So like my great-grandparents and my grandfather. So that was one of the reasons that my parents told me that they decided to move, was just because there was like kind of like persecution. So like my great-grandfather, he spent like, under Stalin, he spent like a lot of time in jail because of that. And yeah, but I guess because like we had that church, the KGB would always come in and kind of like do inspections or raids to see if they could find any like evidence that we had like any kind of contraband, like religious materials and stuff like that. That's what my parents told me. So
Wow.
yeah. So
Wow.
and
So,
if they did, then they sent like the men to to jail or whatever.
wow. Must be different compared to stuff here in the United States. So speaking of that, what were some of the changes you had to adjust to from Belarus to here in the U.S.?
Well, when we first moved here, we moved to Boston, like the Boston area. I don't remember like what, like maybe Braintree or something like that. And it was, I mean, it was just like a bigger city. Like that was like the obvious difference. The other thing, obviously, language and stuff like language barrier, because we didn't know anything. And I mean, for my parents, I would assume it was difficult just because I remember my dad saying that after they sold everything, that all their possessions in Belarus and Gomel, like they had like $100 worth of stuff basically, which is crazy. But so they came here with $100 and they did well for themselves so far. So we're compared to what we had. But yeah, I mean, we lived just. It was like the first apartment we had was like in a basement. I just remember watching like Sesame Street all the time and doing that, and that's how I pretty much learned English, was through like watching shows and kind of the PBS, all the shows on PBS. And after that, then I think I started school maybe first grade or something like that in Medford, and kind of transitioned to that. yeah, some more differences. I guess, well, like we had water finally, running water, things like that. I guess I remember one thing is like everybody used to say like in Belarus was when you come to America, you'd get like refrigerators full of food, and like basically like, you'd have a bunch of food, which wasn't necessarily the case, but it was just that's the one thing that we were kind of like, because like everybody used to say, it's like, oh, you're gonna go to America and you could get all this food and like, all this free stuff, and but it wasn't the case, I guess. Yeah, actually another thing. Yeah, I remember when before we moved to America, because like people started like my parents tried to keep it like a secret that we were moving, but then some of the neighbors found out and they basically like robbed us. So like they kind of like tied myself and my mother and my sister were gone, but we came back and they like tied up my dad, had him tied up on a chair, so they like robbed the house too. So like that was kind of like the because it was just jealous and they thought get whatever they can from us type of thing. So but yeah, so it was, I guess that's the other difference. It's a lot safer here too.
So what's life now in Epping, New Hampshire? Where do you live?
Well, Epping, New Hampshire, it's...
Is it a quiet town?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's quiet. So when we first moved there, it was about in 2003, something like that, and it was actually a very small town, and shortly after that, maybe around the end of 2003, beginning of 2004, they built a Walmart, and it kind of just started expanding. So right now it's a lot bigger than when we first moved there. So after I came back from the Army, the town expanded a lot. But yeah, it's there's definitely but it's kind of like living in a how should I say this, in a not like necessarily a village, because we basically live at like a end of a cul-de-sac, and there's a lot of land between the houses, and we have like access to a river, and so it's my parents like still kind of like basically have not like a big garden. I wouldn't say like a farm or anything like that, but it's a big garden where they grow a lot of things over there. No livestock or anything like that, but yeah, that's pretty much how it is.
All right. So when did you enlist? Were you living in Braintree? Were you living in Epping?
Yeah, no, I was in Epping at the time. Yeah. So it was in March. I went off to basic training. March 20-something, like 26th of 2006. So.
And did you always aspire to be in the Army, or was it something that just came to you?
Yeah, so I mean, my childhood, it was like, I don't know, like I always felt like I was like kind of like an outcast, I guess you could say. So I just never like had any like kind of like a lot of friends or anything like that. You know what I mean? And when I was growing up in high school, all throughout school actually, just because kind of like everybody was always like, oh, you're like the commie kid or something like that, because I didn't really have like a name that was like Mike or so it was always like Sergei, and like even the teachers were like, oh, what kind of name was that? And so all the time I would get some kind of stuff about that. So I think it kind of like went on to like the kids kind of saw me as different. So basically like, so what I'm trying to get at was like I didn't really, so I started kind of like rebelling early on. I never like graduated high school. I went to, I finished 9th grade, and then I kind of just went to work. I started doing construction. I never really thought about, so, I mean, when you're a kid, you play like, Army or things like that. But I didn't really know exactly that I wanted to go into the Army. Like when I actually went to the recruiter, I didn't know anything about the Army. I was just like, I just want to do something that's cool, maybe something that you see on TV or in the movies. That's what I told him, and he suggested going in as infantry, and that's kind of how I, chose that MOS or job or whatever. But yeah, and that was pretty much it. I mean, when I decided to join the Army was probably like a few years back, so prior to that, and it was because, so I remember seeing some kind of like either something on the news or something, some kind of documentary about Iraq at the time, and it was about like contractors in Iraq, and it was just, they were just showing like life, you know, basically, or in Baghdad, in the green zone actually. So, and I don't know, I just remember because I was like sitting in the living room and I'm just like, I'm not really doing anything. I think I was like maybe doing some kind of like carpentry work or something like that, like at that time, and just not really going anywhere in life. And that's kind of like when I started thinking like maybe I should do something, you know, something along the lines of going into the Army. That's kind of what I remember. That was kind of like the point where I decided, and or was started like actually like considering that as one of my options. And then the moment when I actually decided to, my cousin went to the Marines, and he came back from basic training, and it was just kind of like, well, if he can do it, then I can do it too, you know. So.
Right.
So that's what but I tried to go into the Marines, but like I said, I didn't graduate high school, so at that time the Marines had a higher standard, so they were not accepting anybody with a GED. They wanted somebody with, they wanted people with only high school diplomas, so then I tried the Army, and so the Army accepted me with a GED, so.
So how did your family react to your decision to join the Army?
Like, so I didn't tell them until pretty much until I was like maybe a week before I was supposed to leave, and but they were fine. I mean, you know, my mom was a little bit scared, but that's her. But kind of, you know, I felt like I said, when I was a kid, I just screwed around. I wasn't like a perfect kid, so I felt like they were actually like finally proud of me. So it was a pretty big deal for me. Yeah, but yeah, like I remember having like probably like maybe the weekend before I shipped out or whatnot, maybe the day before, we had like a big dinner with like family and friends that came over. So
Nice.
So basically, yeah, they were proud.
Nice. How much did you prepare for boot camp at Fort Benning?
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all?
None. Yeah.
Was there a reason why?
I don't know. I mean, maybe I was just lazy. Maybe I don't know. It was just okay. So when I was going to basic training, so the only things that I really knew about basic training was from either older people that were in the Russian army or people, well, like my cousin. But I feel like my cousin just like lied a lot about like the difficulty of it, because it wasn't that difficult. It was just like basic training. Well, in my opinion, basic training is supposed to be challenging, but it's supposed to show to the individual that, hey, you can do this if you put enough effort into it, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I wasn't like in bad shape. I think when I went to basic training, I was about like I was skinny. I was like 140 pounds maybe, something like that, and just I didn't think it would be too difficult. Like before I joined, I remember the recruiter having me do like it wasn't even like because there's like the APFT test where you have to like Army Physical Fitness Test. I think that's what the acronym stands for. But it was like usually, so when you're actually in the Army, you have to do like 2 miles, push-ups and sit-ups, and you know, however many you do like for the sit-ups and push-ups and how fast you run. That's like that determines your grade out of 300 being the best. But he had me do, I don't know, I forget, like maybe like 10 or 20 push-ups and 10 or 20 sit-ups. So it wasn't like anything crazy, which is not even like a passing grade, I don't think, in the like APFT. It wouldn't be a passing grade. But yeah, it wasn't that difficult. And then when I got to basic training, I mean, like I said, it wasn't that bad. It was just like, I mean, I wasn't like strong like for like upper body strength. I didn't really have too much upper body strength, but it was like after that. I mean, the first day, I don't know how many push-ups we did. Well, let me take that back actually. Well, the first kind of like couple days or maybe a week, you're kind of in this in processing phase where nothing really happens. You're just there, kind of getting shots, getting paperwork done, all that stuff, and then once you transition from that, you kind of go into like this other like holding area where they get ready and put you into like when they're gonna bring you to whatever company you're gonna be in. So and then when we finally get to the company, it's like, you know, you have all your stuff, and then they have you either like hold out your stuff or something like that. Basically, they put you in a circle. They make sure you don't have any contraband, stuff like that. Well, then when and like most of the time, I would imagine that probably people have contraband, or they'll find something and then they'll make you do push-ups, or it's like remedial training or whatever you want to call it. And like in that first day, you definitely start like increasing your, you know, strength and stuff like that, because you start doing a lot of push-ups.
All right. Did you have like a daily routine or like specific role that you played at Fort Benning while you were there?
So daily routine. I mean, it was just like everything else. So it's like we would. I'm not sure when we woke up. We woke up early. I mean, for me, because back before the Army, I just slept in whenever. I woke up pretty much whenever I wanted to, or whenever I had to work, you know, like that. But it was definitely earlier than that. But then the biggest thing that I remember, and the thing that like kind of really at least got to me, was just like, it was a sleep deprivation portion of it, because we would have to do like fire guard, it was called. So fire guard is it's basically like you're just watching the barracks and making sure like where everybody's sleeping, you're just making sure that everything is fine. That's pretty much the basics of it. And then so you would do that, and how we had, I think, I want to say 2 people doing that. So I think it was 2, maybe it was a little bit more than that. But anyways, so it'd be me. Somebody would be like sitting down. Then they would have like a roving one, like, where you would just walk around in a circle. I'm not sure if we did that all the time, the roving one, but we definitely have 2 people up. Pretty sure it was 2. So, and then they would kind of. So when you would go through that training, it would I'm not sure how to say this, like, so I mean my actual like my role, I don't think I had like a specific role. I was just, you know, somebody training, you know, trainee or whatever you want to call it. But there was a time, like, so I mean, I wasn't, like I said, I didn't know anything about the Army. I never held a gun before the Army. I never did anything like that. When I went there, I think I might have been like a team leader or like a squad leader for like a day or something like that, maybe a week.
How was that?
I mean, it wasn't anything. It was just basically like you just have to. I think at that point you just have to make sure the guys had all their gear and you know, all their whatever they needed to be there, like for them to wake up at that time. But I mean, I wasn't ready for anything like that at that time. I just didn't really care, to be honest with you. I just kind of just wanted to get it over with, because like I said, it was easy, but it was just kind of one of those things like where, well, I don't want to say it was easy. It was just it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was. Because actually, let me get back to how I thought, like, so basically everything that I knew about the military, about basic training, was from my older generation. So I in my head, I thought when we would get to basic training, they would like hit us and do like all these things, you know, like crazy things like that, and it was nothing like that. So that was why, to me, it seemed a lot easier, maybe because I was expecting like a level of difficulty a lot higher than what it was, and which it wasn't. And so
you could say it didn't really meet your expectations.
Yeah.
All right. So what kind of role did you have once you were deployed in Baghdad?
So I was a team leader. So I was like a fresh team leader. So my original unit was, right after basic training, I went to Fort Irwin, California, which was, and I was at the 11th ACR. armored cavalry regiment, and so I spent like 2 years over there, and then I re-enlisted to go to Fort Drum, and when I went to Fort Drum, I was there for about 2 weeks, and then I went to Iraq with them, and and I just picked up my specialist, and then when I got to Fort Drum and I got to Iraq, they didn't have enough team leaders or like NCOs, so like non-commissioned officers, so they gave me like a lateral promotion to corporal. So I was a corporal then, and just so it kind of changed. So at first I was kind of like a dismounted team leader. Then I was a truck commander, and those were pretty much both the roles that I had over there.
So how much weight do you think fell on your shoulders once you reached the rank of sergeant?
Well, sergeant actually. So I got sergeant. It was kind of like one of those. How should I say this? So basically, I got promoted like right when I was getting out. So to the sergeant, I wasn't really like in that rank.
Okay. So what about corporal then?
But corporal, I mean, it was. So basically, like a corporal is kind of like you have the same duties and responsibilities as a sergeant, but you don't get the pay and then you don't get like the recognition. That's what a lot of people. It's like you deal with all that shit, but you don't. You know, like let's say, because a lot of times, because it's still an E4, and so when anything comes down, like there's some kind of stupid detail that needs to be done, they're always like, well, let's get an E4, let's get a corporal to do it, because like none of this, like the higher sergeants or whatever want to do it. So that was, but I do remember it wasn't like the first patrol that I was in, but it was. I remember because my time in Iraq, it wasn't like crazy. And I was there in 2008, like around when did I go? Like, man, I don't even remember, like April-ish, something like around this time I went there, and or maybe April, May, something like that, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't like, you know, but so it was the first time when like we got like shot at, and I just remember getting out of the truck because like we were like getting ready to either like figure out, like, it's like we were getting shot at and we're like, shit, are we gonna assault this place or like this building or whatnot? And I just remember that time, like it was just kind of like I don't know, like something like just was like that was the weight that was like the biggest thing. It wasn't like the duty, like the whatever extra shit that you had to do. It was just like the stuff that like I realized like because I had guys, you know, I had like a team, and like if I was just like, shit, if they die like on me, and I'm like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, you know what I mean? But like, but at the same time, because I remember really, and so Oakley, he was the other corporal, like me and him were just promoted, and he ran up to me with his team, and he was like, dude, what are we gonna do? And I'm like, and like I just remember like that feeling, and I'm like, shit, I don't know, and then all of a sudden everything just like all the training just like went into play, and then I was like, okay, we're gonna do this and this and this, and then like after that it just kind of went smoothly. But yeah, so it was just kind of like one of those, like I feel like that's like the weight on my shoulders was like always like thinking about that, not necessarily like, you know, the extra responsibilities or whatever. But yeah.
So what was your first day like in Baghdad? Do you remember?
In Baghdad. So we flew in. On like an AC-130 or something like that from Kuwait. It's probably like, it was still daylight out. I remember that. But we flew into I guess what would you call it, Victory Base Complex, VBC, which is kind of like in the Baghdad airport. Flew in there. Like these buses came, picked us up. Like I was expecting like we were gonna fly in, there was gonna be like rockets coming in and all that. They were just like, we just flew in there and it was like nothing, you know. And just that was it. Like we flew in, they picked us up on these buses. They're like, hey, it was kind of like in processing basically to like another unit. Like they were like, okay, I don't know, like I don't remember like exactly, but like we just did some. They just told you like, hey, this is what you're gonna do, this and this and this, like where you're gonna stay. So we got in the tents. I think that first day though, I think there was like a rocket attack or something like that, and that was about it. But when I say like a rocket, it was just, I think it was just like one rocket or something like that, and it was just like in the far distance. And but that was
Now, did the media portray it in a way you feel was accurate? Did you ever watch the news and see news coverage of the war going on?
that time during the
During that time or before even?
Honestly, that time we had such a busy schedule during that time. We slept for a little bit. We always like ran patrols or something like that, so we didn't really have time to do anything like that during that time. And I probably didn't really give a shit what they were saying, honestly. And before that, yeah, like I don't know, I've just never kind of really paid attention to them, to be honest with you. Like,
Was it just for, did you not just pay attention because of certain reason? You just, obviously you said you didn't really have time for it.
yeah, during that, like, just in general, I mean, I do have that, like, idea of the media, like, they do, there's probably a lot of stories. Well, okay, so, yeah, like, I guess if you really want to get into, like, that, there's definitely shit that they... But that's like the whole government. I feel like that they don't tell people what's going on, and like there's definitely things that are not said to the public, and I don't know, because I feel like sometimes like if people find out, maybe they'll be like, hey, like we're not like really like the best people, like the best country, to. And or our ideas of what's right and wrong is not really what we believe, or like what's actually happening. I'm sorry, not what we believe, but so. But yeah.
Okay. Can you describe the IDF for me, and how they may have strengthened or changed your view on on how the war was going?
The idea of how the war was going.
So can you describe well, we'll start with this. Can you describe the IDF?
Oh, IDF?
IDF.
Oh, like a direct fire?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times, so basically what happens is there's just like some kind of siren that goes off, and then there's shit, what is it called? Damn, I don't know. But it's basically like this huge like minigun, and they just like, they have like their own like little sensors that they kind of triangulate where there's a rocket coming in, or a mortar or something like that, and then they just like fire off at it. One of the things that, because we had like also like I was on a task force. It was task force vigilance, and one of our roles was kind of like perimeter security. So whenever something like that would happen, there's usually like so they would send us out to wherever. So like let's say a rocket lands.
Mm-hmm.
So you would find out where the rocket lands, and then you would fill out like do a report, and then use that report to kind of like figure out like where it came from, and then we would go and or if somebody else would go and figure out if the people are still there that shot it off. So that was pretty much my experience. I mean, honestly, and then like after a while, like you just there wasn't. I think you kind of just get like desensitized to it, because like there's a lot of times like it just goes off, and like nothing happens. But like because you like, for me at least, like nothing happened. A lot of times it was just kind of like it would go off, like it might, because it was like a big base, and it would go off. Maybe it would hit somewhere really far, and that was it. And after a while, you just kind of don't care, because you're kind of like, what are the odds? They haven't like hit us yet, so
Yeah, so you just wonder, are we safe? Obviously, I'm sure you said you become desensitized to it. Do you ever worry that maybe one of these times or one of those times you weren't going to be safe from anything like that?
I never thought about it, honestly. No, I don't think I ever really thought about it, to be honest, because it was, like I said, it was at the time that I was there was like maybe like a handful of things that ever like really happened that were like really, you know, you would say like that were bad. So it was just like in my mind, I don't know, and plus it was kind of like, it was just like a part of the job, I guess you could say. Like that's what I always thought about it as, like kind of like that.
Okay. So when did you finally leave Iraq?
That was like around like May or June 2009.
How did it feel getting on? I'm assuming you were on a plane coming back?
Yeah.
How did it feel getting on the plane and coming back?
Well, actually, no. We were on. So when we left Iraq, we were on Blackhawks. We kind of just like, because at that point we were in. So what happened was in Baghdad, like so January 2009, they signed like some basically like new ROEs, like the president of Iraq and I think the president of like Bush, or maybe whoever, I don't know who made the decisions, but you know, so basically they said something either about like, not necessarily like a drawdown, but it was more or less kind of like they restructured our rules of engagement and like what we were able to do, and basically, I mean, they were winding down Baghdad at that point already, or they were initializing the wind down of Baghdad, I believe, or like kind of like bring it back to, because like I think how it worked, I wasn't there for like that portion of it, but I think they brought everything down, like kind of like from all the way from the city, because like from the country down to Basra, and so anyways, we went to Basra, and because there was nothing really going on in Baghdad anymore, especially. And I think that happened like around January, so it was after like my leave. I took leave around January-ish, and then I came back, and yeah, and then shortly after that we were like, hey, let's hop down to Basra, and it was only like a small group of us that went initially, and then after that, yeah, so and when we ended up leaving, we just went on Blackhawks to Kuwait, and Kuwait we kind of had like this time where we, how should I say this? Basically like a cool off stage, you know. You kind of met with, like we kind of met with some psychologists, maybe, you know, medical people, and I think that was it, maybe something like that. And then it was just basically relaxing. I remember spending the whole time at like MWR. They had an MWR at that base, and we just like played video games the whole time for like, let's say like a week, you know.
Wow.
And then after that, we got on a plane, and I think either went to Germany or England, and then hopped over to Fort Drum.
Wow. How was the reception when you came back?
I mean, it was just people in the army. I mean, like it was very quick. Like they just grabbed our guns and like our rifles, and that was it. Like we just kind of, like they kind of just like there were people like waiting there, like, hey, sign your leave papers, like, and get out of here. Well, it wasn't leave. It was a 4-day pass that they gave us. 4-day pass, and yeah, then I got home. I called my parents, and they drove up to pick me up. Kind of spent the week, or at least a couple days, back home, and then went back, and yeah, that was it.
Was it hard readjusting back to civilian life?
Not, I mean, here and there. Like when I first got back, I think like it was kind of just weird. It was just like, because like the things that we did, it was like, it was so like engraved, and like those things, yeah, they're hard to, like, hard. Like you just have to like think about it. You're like, okay, I'm not here, you know, or I'm not there. But it was kind of like driving. Let's say like whenever we would pass through a like an overpass, so we would also always like try to like vary our like, so like if we would come in on the left side, we would swerve to go in on the or exit on the right side, or you know, vice versa. And that was done so basically because there was like a lot of people, or not, there were reports of people like dropping grenades or something like that from overpasses, or you know, some kind of explosives. And so that was done so that they couldn't really guess where we were doing that. So it's just like stupid stuff like that we would do. So it's like when you kind of get used to things like that, you kind of just do that. And then it was just a lot of times when we were driving around, we would be like vigilant for certain things that like we were like, hey, this might be something, this might be something. So those are the things that like, so basically like hyper awareness. I think that was like the things that was the biggest thing that was like the difficult thing to adjust. And like, you know, being in crowds, I remember that was like a big thing for me too. But it just takes time and kind of, you know, just gotta live life. I don't know, kind of, you still have to go out and do stuff. But, you know.
Right. So on your bio form, you wrote that you'd worked in loss prevention in 2014. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
So I worked at Nordstrom Rack in Boston, Wilson Street, and so basically it was just guys. So basically we were just kind of in charge of protecting store assets, I guess you could say. And so if anybody, I mean, a lot of times, so basically there was like shoplifters, pet shoplifters, and that was the basics of it.
Can you tell me about your college career so far, and you know how it might or how it will lead you into the field of finance?
Yeah. So far, I mean, I guess college was kind of like I mean, I told you about my history with school. It wasn't really. I didn't. So when I first left the Army, I kind of wanted to go into like contracting or some kind of work like that. I didn't really. So I left in like the end of November. I was out of the Army, 2011, and I didn't really have anything else to do. And I was applying at these contracting places, but or companies, and nobody was really, you know, responding to me. So I knew that I had the GI Bill, and my cousin, who was already out of the Marines, he told me, he's like, hey, you know, you get some money if you go back to school, like you get like a stipend every month, so yeah, it can hold you over until you find something. So I kind of went with that. I went to North Shore Community College and took some classes. I didn't know what to expect because I didn't like school. You know, at least from what I remember in high school, I hated that stuff. And but it was fine. It was even fun, I would say. And so I kind of just continued with that. So went on and well, like at first, so I went to so I finished up at North Shore Community College. I went to Bentley. I had like some personal problems. So I guess like it was still like kind of like, you know, like at that time, like when I was first getting out, like I don't know, I just wasn't. I guess I should, I don't know if I should mention it, but so after I got back from Iraq, we didn't have any casualties when we were in Iraq, but after, when we got back, one of my basically my guys who was on my team, he ended up like killing two of our other guys. So at least, it was Hunter, who was he was my saw gunner, and then or like my dismount saw gunner, and then I had when we were mounted, I had my machine gunner. So he killed him, and he killed another guy who was from a different platoon. You know, still don't know really why, but he did that, and that was like hard. That was hard because it was kind of like the day before he did it. Like I kind of knew something was up, you know, but it was just, you know, I didn't really do anything about it. And so that was like a hard pill to process, but yeah, when I got out of the Army, it was kind of like, that was like mostly like what was really fucking me up. It was kind of like not taking action in those situations,
Right.
in that situation. And yeah, so like I did like have like I started like drinking a lot and started doing stuff like that. So I basically, like, I had an OUI, I had other like run-ins with the police, and like that's why I ended up like leaving. Well, one of the reasons why I ended up leaving Bentley was because it was just kind of like, things were just like, they weren't like perfect, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I withdrew from there, and then later on, I took some time off from school, like, I don't know, like 5 months or something like that. And then I came over here, and because I had like a friend that was going here too, and he said it was pretty good, and yeah, so you know, and like those actually the things that are good about that's good about kind of schools like this. What I would say, like a school like Bentley, what it really lacked was like the veteran community. So, and I think I was like maybe one of, when I first started going to Bentley, I was one of 2 veterans, and then after like, you know, when I left, I think I was like one of 4, and so when I was at North Shore, that's actually what made it easier for me to, or what made me like going to school, was because like every time before class and after class, I would go hang out at the veteran center over there, and so I kind of like, it was like an easy transition because I was just talking to like with people that like knew, you know,
Right.
just that were like in the military too. You know?
So you can say you had a support system.
Yeah.
At
Totally.
each university, right?
Well, besides Bentley.
Besides Bentley.
Yeah, and yeah, so, but you know, like I came here, and like I said, I knew people here, so it was good, and yeah, and then I finished up my bachelor's over here and went on to my master's. So.
All right. Would you encourage anyone coming, like, from your story, you know, coming from high school, to enlist in the military, and what advice would you give them?
Yeah, no, I definitely would. I think, I mean, I would not, I don't know what I would be doing if I didn't go to the Army. I mean, like, I mean, I was doing construction, but that you know, it's good money, but depending what, but you know, but yeah, the Army was just like, it's hard to explain. Like I guess like maybe like the best, maybe like generic kind of thing. I mean, the Army kind of gave me like structure. I didn't really know how to prioritize like things that I like, goal setting, you know, things like that. But the Army definitely kind of teaches you, hey, like there's a mission that needs to be done, and I think that's kind of what I've been, what I was lacking. Definitely, let's say prior to the military, when I was in high school and you know, other school, like I think that was like my biggest thing. I just didn't go to class, or if I had assignments, homework, I wouldn't do it. But now with that, you know, I learned that skill set, I guess, through the military, where it was just like, hey, there's a mission at hand, you've got to do it. And there's homework at hand, you got to do it. There's this project, do it, you got to do it. You know, so so I definitely would recommend it. I mean, there's it all depends at the on the individual, basically. You know, some people don't need the military, I think. I mean, some people. It's kind of like this. Like I feel like a lot of people say, like, you know, you need to go to college, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. Like some people need to go into the military, it helps them out. Some people need to go to college, you know, it will help them. And some people don't need to go to college. Maybe they might need to go to a trade school, or maybe they're like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, that don't need to go to college. You know, they'll be fine, and that everybody's different. And I think people just need to evaluate their case, like their situation, like case by case, and figure out like if the military is something for them, and I mean, have like a legitimate reason to go, I guess, you know, and I mean, you know, it is a commitment at the same time. there was definitely a lot of people that kind of that I saw in the military that kind of go into the military and then they either they got weeded out in basic training or they got weeded out in the first unit or something like that. But it's just because they're not. It's an organization just like any other organization, any kind of big business. Like some people make it and some people rise through the ranks. Same thing with like I would say like if you work for I don't know maybe like a big organization, Google or something. Some people might come in as like I don't know like engineers, like software engineers, but they can't cut it and then they get fired or whatever, they leave and other people can and they rise through the ranks too. So it's just like any other place like that. And I think that's like the biggest thing though. It's people like the fit. It's like people need to kind of it's not just like a job. It's more of like it becomes a part of you. Like that was the other thing that I felt like when I left. I felt like something was missing, because I wasn't. Oh, like it sounds. So I was always like, it wasn't like I was never one of those people that like looked for praise. I was never one of those people that like. I was never like, oh, do you guys have a military job? I've never like said stuff like that. Like I didn't really care about advertisement and stuff. But it was just, it was like, it's hard to explain. But it was like I was, I was Sergei Onohkin, who was a, infantryman in the army. Like that was my identity. And then it was just kind of like, after I left the army, I was just like, Sergei Onohkin, like what the fuck is that? Like after so long, you just, So.
Would you want your kids to enlist in the military, or would you steer them away from it?
I wouldn't steer them away from it, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's a great, like it just depends on the person, but
Right.
I think it's great, but I wouldn't specifically say like stay away from it. I don't think I would tell that to anybody. I think just evaluate your needs and what why are you joining?
What about your opinion on the war? Has it changed ever since you left Iraq? Being on the outside rather than being on the inside?
You mean like, how should I say, like, should we have been there? Like, is that what you're asking?
I suppose so.
Yeah.
Has it changed like since, before you joined, during you joined, or even after?
I guess I don't want to. Okay, so before I joined, I thought that we should have been there. I think at that point, everybody thought, hey, we need to go into Iraq. I mean, like, and then I hear reports and things like that, like that say things were falsified or things were not really as they seemed, and it's hard to think that there's so many people that died for nothing, that I think it's just better to think that I don't know, it's yeah, because I mean like at the same, like I have had friends that died in Iraq, that and it'd be kind of fucked up if they died for no reason. So, which I mean, most likely, yeah, but you never know.
Would you ever re-enlist? Consider it?
Oh yeah, no, like right now, I mean, like I'm still looking for work right now, and that's one of the options that I'm considering right now. Trying to see what I can do. I'm just hoping that like any kind of like legal issues that I had in the past, that they won't kind of come back and bite me if I decide to do that, because I feel like, you know, I learned a lot of new skills after, you know, from college, so I feel like I can definitely utilize those in the Army or, you know, whatever capacity like that.
Would you go back to the infantry? Or
You
would
know,
you think of something new?
so I can't imagine doing anything else besides that, to be honest with you. Like, that's like we have like a saying, basically there's like infantry and then there's everybody else in the Army, or like there's like basically the infantry is like the only like job in the Army, and the saying was something different. I kind of butchered it, but anyways, because I think it's a little probably vulgar, but yeah, I don't know, like, and I thought about that, but it's just nothing really would appeal to me in the Army, you know, like doing something else, because yeah.
All right. So if there's one thing that you'd like to tell anyone who watches this this recording about service in the military, what would it be?
One thing that service about in the military, I think, I mean, for me, in my case, it was just like the best experience of my life, I think. It's not, it's, like I said before, it's more than just a job. It's also like, you meet, like, awesome people there. Some of the best people that I've ever known. And it's just, yeah, I think, like, you know, there are bad times in the military, there's good times in the military, but I don't remember any of the bad times, to be honest with you. Like, I don't remember any of the bad times. About the war, you know, like, let's say, I mean, like, even, I don't know, like, so Iraq was just like, it's a country just like anywhere else. I mean, that's what I remember. I mean, like, we drove around all over the place. I went through, I mean, yeah, it's completely different than America, I would say, but basically it's just people everywhere, I think. I feel like, I don't know, you know, there's like a lot of stuff like in the media maybe right now about like, what is it called? Like, I feel like there's like just too much negativity in the media right now, and I feel like just, we're all people at the end of the day, and like, it doesn't matter where you're from. I feel like even like there were good people in Iraq, there were bad people in Iraq, and I've seen what bad people can do in Iraq, and I've seen what good people can do in Iraq, and
All right, well, Sergei, thank you so much for your time and the amazing opportunity for this interview. That'll just about do it.
Thanks.